What's up, everyone? Hope your day is going well. I am Austin Hoagland back for the first episode of the Man Watches Sports podcast. So this is my first ever episode of doing a sports podcast. So bear with me. There's gonna be some inconsistencies. There's gonna be some bumps in the road, but we'll get through it together. And I'll try to learn as I go along. So hopefully, as we keep going along with this, it'll get a little easier on me. So what this podcast is, I'm just going to talk about whatever's on my mind, whatever's popular in the week of sports, the biggest news, the biggest stories, the biggest games, stuff that I watched personally, because I don't like to talk on things that I don't watch. It really kind of kills it for me. That's just talking about analytics that you really don't know anything about, to be honest. It's just not my thing. So we're just going to talk about what I watched personally throughout the week. So we're going to start with NFL Week 2 news, go through a few games there, a few topics, who's the MVP so far this season, the injury bug that has plagued, absolutely destroyed depth and stars in the league. And then we will preview Thursday night's game between the Miami Dolphins and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Then we'll talk about the NBA Conference Finals, the game for Denver versus LA. Game 3 is tonight, so we'll discuss that a little bit more in depth. We'll talk about Miami-Boston. And then we'll end it off with talking about Premier League Matchday 2. I watched a few games from there. And so we'll talk about a little bit going on in the world of soccer. All right, let's hop right into it. NFL Week 2, let's talk about it. So the first game that we're going to focus on was the first game of the week between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Cleveland Browns. So if you watch both teams, they both went 0-1 in Week 1. The Cincinnati Bengals lost to the Los Angeles Chargers. And that game, it was a decently close game, I guess you could say. I mean, it really, as somebody who watched that game, it looked like the Bengals actually had a chance, and they only lost by one possession in that game. But it really wasn't as, they kind of blew it. They kind of choked that game away to the Los Angeles Chargers. We saw a glimpse of what Joe Burrow could become in that game. It wasn't amazing. He didn't do anything sensational. He wasn't a star quarterback right out of the bat. But he made some good throws. Yes, he threw an interception, a terrible, terrible interception on some kind of option play. It looked like maybe a toss. But it really wasn't a good play from Joe Burrow, and you could tell that. And he was kind of beating himself up a little bit over it, but he knew he was still confident. He still came back, had a decent game, didn't throw for a touchdown, but he was still pretty good. With the Browns just got absolutely dominated by the Baltimore Ravens. People couldn't tell, are the Ravens this good or are the Browns just that bad? Like, it was that kind of blowout. And that's a bad kind of blowout to be in, because when you're being talked about as like, are you that terrible? As a team that should be contending for the playoffs, you're not doing too well. But the thing that has stayed consistent for the Browns is their running game. Right? It's their running game. It's Kareem Hunt. It's Nick Chubb. They can pound the ball, run it on the ground. They're really good at running the football. And Baker has seemed to be the biggest talking point with the Browns. Is he a starting quarterback in the league? I think everyone would agree. He's probably a starting quarterback in this league. But is he a number 1 overall pick quarterback? That is still yet to be seen. I was a big Baker fan. Him coming out of college, I was really, excited to see what he did at the next level, especially after Week 3 when he, replaced Tyrod Taylor and came in, played against the Jets, and he just took over that game. And that's when the hype for him started, because that was Cleveland's first win in a very, very long time. So we get to this game, Bengals-Browns. And at the start, the Browns are looking absolutely fantastic. You see that big, long throw to Odell Beckham for the touchdown, and everyone's like, Odell's back. when Baker throws to Odell, their connection's starting to form. They're going to be a great tandem. Finally, they found their connection. But it really just wasn't that. After that catch, there really wasn't that much going on with Odell throughout the game. And so I'm not really sure if they've really found their connection. They made one good pass and catch. So we can't overjudge what happened there. But the main consistent thing for the Browns that kept them in this game when the Bengals were, kind of trying to bring it back was their run game. You look and, man, over 200 yards combined from Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Both of their averages are looking great. Nick Chubb was 22 for 124, average of 5.6 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. Kareem Hunt, 10 attempts for 86 yards and a touchdown, average of 8.6 yards per carry. I mean, that is just absolutely fantastic. That is the kind of production you want out of your top 2 running backs. And now I'm kind of thinking, are they the best 1-2 tandem in the running game? It may be. Their main competition is up in Green Bay. But right now it looks like Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb might be the best 1-2 tandem of running backs in the NFL today. And they're super exciting to watch. Kareem Hunt, man, I have had admiration for him since he was played in Kansas City, of course. You know what happened there. He got into a little bit of trouble. He got into a little bit of trouble. It wasn't fantastic. And he had to be kind of exiled from Kansas City. And so when he found his opportunity for the Cleveland Browns, I was happy for him. I wished him the best, even with his, questionable history. I wished him the best, and I knew maybe he could turn it around over in Cleveland, and it looks like he's having a really good time. Now, Joe Burrow. Let's talk Joe Burrow out of LSU. This was a game for him to prove himself, and man, did he prove himself. He threw over 61 times. Well, he threw exactly 61 times, to be fair. Threw 61 times, right? How many interceptions? 0 interceptions. None. No interceptions. That is crazy. There are very few quarterbacks who I trust to throw 61 times and not throw a single interception. He started to really put it together. I mean, he completed 37 of his passes, so over 60% completion percentage. That's not exactly, like top elite completion percentage, but it's not, kind of completion percentage. It's not this guy cannot throw the ball accurately. He threw the ball pretty accurately, 316 yards, 3 touchdowns, QB rating of 94.2. That is what you want to see out of your number 1 overall pick. He looks consistent. He looks like he can be a consistent performer. And guess what? All he wants to do is win. He didn't care about his own performance. He is pissed that he has lost 2 games in a row. And let's talk about that loss, right? Let's talk about what went into the Bengals losing. Baker Mayfield, if you look at his stats, you kind of think, wow, he had a pretty good game. 16 for 23, 219 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did have 1 pick. It was a pretty bad pick. It was William Jackson, kind of. He never saw William Jackson as he threw the ball. William Jackson just cut in front of the receiver. Beautiful interception by him. Good play from a defensive back. That's what you want to see out of your defensive back. I like William Jackson a lot as a defender, so I want to see what he does throughout the season. But good play from him. But Baker, not so much. And that was kind of the story of the game. Like, he only threw 23 times. He just kind of had to game manage a lot. And, yeah, you look at his stats, and you're like, yeah, I mean, but he had over 10 yards per completion. That's really good. Yeah, it's good, but, I mean, he really wasn't asked to do that much. And he still ended up throwing a pick out of just 23 passes. So, wasn't amazing for Baker. And Joe Burrow kind of outplayed him, it looked like. That's a lot of what people are saying. People are saying Joe Burrow looks better than Baker Mayfield, and it is hard to disagree. But the running game kept him in it. It got down to the 4th quarter, and it was kind of looking not too good. I mean, we're talking Bengals had 16, Browns had 28. I mean, it looks like they weren't really gonna put up much of a fight. The Browns were gonna come out with a big win, and it just didn't happen. The Bengals, the one thing you can say about the Bengals, right? The one thing you can say about Joe Burrow's team is that they are not going to quit at all. It comes down to the fourth quarter, man. They're in the last few minutes. They're down by 10. They're still going to keep fighting. And that's what I appreciate about Joe Burrow and this Bengals offense, is that they're going to keep trying no matter what happens. So, good on them. And it came down to 35-30 to the Cleveland Browns. They escaped with the win, but it wasn't easy, and that is what matters. The Bengals, I think they're going to lose a lot of games this year, but I don't think that they're going to be blowouts. There might be a few blowouts here and there. They're going to run into some superior teams, especially being in the same division as the Ravens, the Baltimore Ravens. But I don't think they're going to get blown out much. I think Joe Burrow is going to keep them in a lot of games that they wouldn't have been in last year, and that's extremely important, man. That's what you want to see. So, get to Sunday. What was the big game that I watched on Sunday? Did I watch a super exciting game like the Patriots-Seahawks? I caught a little bit of it, but I was driving back home, so I didn't really get to catch much of it. Did I watch the Cardinals-Washington football team where Kyler Murray, he looks super exciting. He's the next up-and-coming QB. No. We're going to talk about my home team, the team that I'm going to watch every week. I'm going to keep you updated. You're going to know what's going on with the Kansas City Chiefs every week because I'm going to talk about them. I'm going to watch the games every week. Hopefully they won't be as infuriating as this game was. So Chiefs-Chargers. The Kansas City Chiefs, the Los Angeles Chargers, SoFi Stadium, the first game that the Chargers play in SoFi Stadium, and they look to get a win. They were very close, and let's talk about how close they were. So it was a huge surprise to me and to everyone, probably even to the Kansas City Chiefs and to Andy Reid. The big news that came out right before the game started. Pretty much right as the ball was snapped, we learned Justin Herbert was going to be starting. Now, Justin Herbert out of Oregon is a very interesting case. I really, really liked him. I thought he was fantastic a year before now. Not in his last year at Oregon. But when I was watching him, I really liked him. I really liked his mobility. I liked his ability to throw outside the pocket, get outside the pocket, use his legs. He was a little comfortable sliding in and out of the pocket. And he had good pocket awareness. I'm going to say pocket a million times before we're done. He had a strong arm. Looks pretty accurate. You know, he's going to make a few mistakes here and there. We'll get to one of his big mistakes from the game. But he really showed me what he was about in this game. And he proved to me that last year was kind of a fluke. Everyone was looking at him and they were like, should he really, should a team take a chance on Justin Herbert? How far is he going to fall in the draft? I mean, we know Tua is going to go before him. We know Joe Burrow is going to go before him. But I think that Justin Herbert has a very high ceiling. And he showed why in this game. So the final score after OT was Chiefs 23, LA Chargers 20. Now let's go and break down every part of this game because this game I'm very familiar with, locked in every second of this game. So it started out, the Chargers get the ball. They're looking pretty good. They looked pretty good. They drove down the field, looked like it was no problem. And the Chiefs defense took a lot of time to get into this game. You saw inconsistency, especially with the linebackers, Damian Wilson. We wanted to see Dorian O'Daniel out there a little bit more. Didn't look like he got that many snaps. But the linebacking core for the Chiefs has to be the biggest kind of hole on this team. It doesn't look good. It really just doesn't. They were very inconsistent, leaving guys open in the middle of the field pretty much all game. It was not a great day for them. And so we kind of got our defensive backs out there, tried to make some plays. We were really injured with Charvarius Ward out, and that did not look good. And then Antonio Hamilton got injured as well. So our DB core went down to 3 cornerbacks, And so L'Jarius needed to step up and make plays, and he eventually did. So they had L'Jarius Sneed out there, Rashad Fenton was out there. Um, and we threw in some guys that, I didn't know if they were going to get snaps. So, we're talking guys like Willie Gay got in the game, on special plays at least. We have guys like Taco Charlton got his chance. So Frank Clark went out at halftime with an illness. I don't know how you contract an illness halfway through a game, but that's what happened. So Chiefs were really struggling early on. Let's go sequentially here. Chiefs were struggling early on, both sides of the ball. Chargers go up 7. Chiefs can't even score in the first quarter. Really bad start from them. And the Chargers were just continuing to surge. They didn't look good every drive. Let's talk about that. They didn't look good every drive. But they looked like they could move the football. And it looked like Justin Herbert wasn't making any big mistakes, which is good. He actually was pretty on par with Mahomes that game. Threw a lot less passes. They were trying the running game, and with Austin Eckler it really worked, but with Joshua Kelly it didn't really. Joshua Kelly got more snaps than Austin Eckler did, and he had a much worse average. Eckler had more yards. I don't know why you don't just kind of, if I was them, I'd go completely Austin Eckler. Run him at least 25 times per game, if not more, every week. And it worked out for them. They only ran him 16 times. He had 93 yards. No touchdowns, but he was really good. But Justin Herbert, let's talk about him. He looked fantastic. He couldn't get hit. It felt like you had Chiefs linebacker. I believe that was Damian Wilson who ran into him and just got demolished. It looked like he was running into him full speed. Like, I thought Justin Herbert was about to go down and get injured. And then Wilson is the one who takes time to get up. Herbert's just like shaking it off. He's ready to get back onto the field. And Wilson's just like, what's going on? So Chiefs score a touchdown later there, and it's starting to look good. But they actually miss the PAT. It was a blocked PAT. Let's put that down. Harrison Butker did not miss the PAT. It was blocked. So I guess down in the scorebooks it will say he missed it, but it was blocked. It was a good play from the Chargers special teams unit, and it allowed them to go up by 8 points as they scored a touchdown in the second quarter as well. So we go into halftime. Things are looking a little, on both sides. And let's talk about the big mistake that Justin Herbert made in this game. Now, Justin Herbert played pretty consistently throughout the whole game, but there was one gigantic mistake that he made that might have just cost the Chargers this game. I mean, with how close it was, you can say it pretty much cost them this game. Chargers are pretty much in field goal territory. They're down in Chiefs territory. They're looking pretty good. Justin Herbert takes the snap, rolls out to the left. I believe it is a third down here, and he rolls out to the left. There is ample space in front of him. We're talking, he probably picks up, with how fast and mobile he is, maybe 20 yards on the ground if he runs it. But he decides to throw a little bit across his body. He's rolling out to the left. He's throwing to the right. So he kind of has to, turn a little bit as he's throwing. And he just makes the wrong play. And L'Jarius Sneed picks it off. It is his second interception in 2 weeks. Great play from L'Jarius Sneed. Chiefs take possession. Both teams score a field goal in the third quarter, but it's all up to the fourth quarter, and that's when the Chiefs, they just locked in. They got into their normal mood of just, hey, we're down. It's time. We have to do this. A great touchdown from Patrick Mahomes to Tyreek Hill. Absolutely bombed it down the field. Tyreek Hill doesn't get touched, springs right back up to his feet. Little somersault action there. And he hops right into the end zone. Great touchdown. And then a 2-point conversion play where Mahomes kind of stays in the pocket. He kind of steps up a little bit. And it is so tight. We're talking the tightest windows you'll ever see. and this man dumps it off to McCole Hardman. Absolutely amazing. That's something that not many people are going to talk about because it was a 2-point conversion. It wasn't anything like super flashy, like, a no-look pass or something like that. But it was an absolutely incredible play, something that not many quarterbacks in the NFL could do. And it was a great play from Patrick Mahomes. And eventually, it came down to overtime. The Chiefs scored 11 in the fourth quarter. That's just them. We should just expect this from them by now. The fact that they're just going to, if they're down, they're going to make it a fight, and they're probably going to win. Patrick Mahomes is 6-0 when down by 10 points or more. And that is an absolutely incredible stat line. I don't think anyone comes close to matching that stat line in the NFL. He has done absolutely incredible in his job at quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs. You can't call him overrated. You really just can't when you see the kinds of throws that he can make, the kinds of comebacks that he can make, the leader that he is. There is no way to overrate this guy. He is one of the best, if not the best quarterback in the league. On talent-wise, I would say he is the best quarterback in the league. So it comes down to overtime, and the Chargers actually get the ball first. And they just kind of stall out a little bit. Herbert didn't look incredible. They couldn't get the running game going. And they played conservative because it was a 4th and 1, and they punted it back to the Chiefs, which was an absolutely horrible decision. Especially with how the Chiefs get when they're in close game situations. Chiefs drive down the field, make it look easy, but they kind of stall out a little bit. And so, but they're in field goal range. It looks easy for them. Harrison Butker, one of the best kickers in the NFL. It looks like he's going to make it an easy field goal. Goes to kick it. Holding call. What? They're going back. It's going to be a 58-yarder now. And so, Butker made that kick, by the way, but there was the holding call or whatever. And so they get pushed back. It's a 58-yard field goal now. Goes to attempt the field goal. Gets iced by the Chargers. Butker started to get pissed. He was upset. He had hit so many kicks. He is just nailing these kicks consistently. You could tell he looked angry when he was warming up. He was kicking the ball like it was, I don't know, like it was Kareem Hunt kicking somebody. It was nuts. And so they finally get down to it. No more timeouts. Butker goes. He nails the 58-yarder. Absolutely incredible game. I mean, it was a little boring at times, a little, conservative, and the Chiefs didn't look good at some points. I mean, they were just, Patrick Mahomes just throwing it into the dirt, getting sacked. The Chargers D-line managed to generate a lot of pressure in this game, so hats off to them. Really great game from some of the Chargers defenders, especially their pass rushers. They looked incredible. Shout out to Jerry Tillery for his performance in this game. He made a few key plays that were really beneficial for the Chargers. And that's what made that game close when most people thought it was going to be a blowout. So the Chiefs won 23-20. What a great game for the Kansas City Chiefs. As for where they'll go next, they're going to Baltimore to play Monday Night Football. And if they play like how they played in this game, I would say they have approximately a 1% chance of winning that game. The Ravens have looked extremely consistent with no flaws, and the Chiefs have looked inconsistent, and they look like they haven't really figured it out yet. So the question for the Kansas City Chiefs is, can they figure it out? Can they be 100%? Can they be the team that we know that they are going into Week 3? I would still put them towards the top, if not at the top of the power rankings. But we'll have to see. Is Andy Reid the best coach in the NFL? Are the Chiefs going to be that team that they were last year, where their defense steps up at the end of the year, they keep making comebacks, they're fighting? And this game said they're going to fight, but this shouldn't have been a game anyways. The surprise of Justin Herbert definitely played a part, but I think the Chiefs still needed to step up big at some points throughout the game, and they just didn't. I'm going to take a short break. My name is Austin Hoagland. I'm going to take a short break real quick on the Man Watches Sports podcast, and we'll be right back to talk about who is the NFL MVP so far in the season. All right, I am back. It is a lot tougher than I thought to sit here and talk for this long and not be extremely thirsty. My mouth is dying as I talk to you guys. So that's what I'm doing for you guys. So please drop a like if you can. We'll get to that later. I'm going to kind of speed through a few of these next few topics because I already took a while to explain those last few games, and I don't want this to be like 3 hours. I want it to be around an hour and 30, somewhere close to that. So let's get to who's the MVP so far of the NFL season. I think it's pretty obvious who the number one candidate is so far. It is Russell Wilson. So it looks like Pete Carroll is finally letting Russ cook. I think everyone's been talking about it. The last few years, man, they've been going to the running game. Chris Carson's been really involved. You know, Marshawn Lynch was really involved when he was with the Seahawks. Not last year, but when he was still a kind of star running back with the Seahawks. You know, everyone was like, Russ is he's a game manager. It's the defense in the running game. But they finally let Russ go off, and boy, is he destroying the league like his name is Steph Curry. He is just cooking up, throwing touchdown passes. His team is 2-0, and if they continue the trajectory that they're on, I think he is the clear MVP of the NFL season. Other contenders have to be Kyler Murray on the Cardinals. I mean, he is just such a dual-threat quarterback, like maybe as much of a dual-threat quarterback as Lamar Jackson. I don't know if that's going a little too far, but right now he's on pace to break Lamar Jackson's record set last year for most rushing yards by a QB in a season. And if that doesn't show you how much of a threat he is with his legs, I don't know what does. On top of that, I mean, he's got top-class arm talent. And now that he has DeAndre Hopkins, that team is scary. We'll have to see how Mahomes and Lamar do. I think they're kind of a little bit taken out of the conversation just because they just won MVP not too long ago. But they could still be in the conversation, especially if one of them has a record-breaking year. But I think the voters don't really like voting for the same guys. It's just that same way across every sport, it seems like. The NBA, you know, sometimes you'll get back-to-back MVPs. We just had a back-to-back MVP, but it's not as common as it probably should be for those guys. The biggest story to come out of NFL Week 2 has to be the injuries between Saquon Barkley of the New York Giants, the running back for the New York Giants. He is probably their most star player, even though his performances wouldn't tell you that because of his terrible offensive line and terrible play calling. You know, Saquon Barkley hasn't had a chance to start this year, and he's already out for the season. Same thing with Nick Bosa. He was a big piece to that Super Bowl squad. They were in the Super Bowl last year. They had a good shot. Nick Bosa, he was going off against the Chiefs. They didn't win, but he was a key piece for a team that wants to go back to the Super Bowl. And it looks like their chances are definitely dropping as we continue to go along. With Jimmy G having an injury, he'll be out at least this next week, it seems like. Probably not that much longer. It's an ankle sprain. He'll be fine. Raheem Mostert also had some injury troubles in that game. So, there are a lot of players going out. There are a lot more than just the names that I mentioned. Courtland Sutton's out for the year, the wide receiver 1 for the Denver Broncos, and Drew Lock's injured. He was injured in that game. He had to go out. Jeff Driscoll replaced him and actually had a pretty decent game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Broncos just signed Blake Bortles, so it looks like Drew Lock will be out for a few weeks. I think they said 4 to 6 weeks for Drew Lock. So the Broncos, who were looked at as a team that could make a wild card spot this year, they're going to be in a little bit of trouble for sure. this injury bug is just taking people by storm. A lot of people are saying it's because there was no preseason, and that makes a lot of sense. When you don't have a preseason, you don't kind of get a chance to ease into the games, full force, and you just have OTAs. Makes things a lot harder, and it makes things to where, your body's not really used to that kind of pain, those hits that you take. And so a lot of people are getting injured, and it sucks to see. I want to see some of these young guys ball out, and some of them, we won't get a chance to see them at all this year, and some of them will be out for a while. So that really sucks to see. I hope all of them get better soon, and I wish them all speedy recoveries. Let's get to week 3. We're just going to preview one game today, and that is the Dolphins and the Jaguars. So the Miami Dolphins, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Let's talk about how they've been over the last 2 weeks. So the Miami Dolphins are 0-2. In the first week, they did not look too hot. Ryan Fitzpatrick did not look too great in that game. And in week 2, they looked slightly better. The real question for them is, are they tanking? Are they trying to win games? Last year it seemed like they were trying to win games. Brian Flores, great coach under the Belichick coaching tree. So you already know how that's interpreted throughout the league. But they look to be a pretty half-decent team last year. You got quality guys, Devontae Parker, and though they had to get rid of some pieces like Minka last season, they look to still be a half-decent team. But it really just never worked out, man. And throughout the first 2 weeks, they didn't look amazing. They didn't really look great. They didn't look like a team that was going to consistently win games. They looked like a team that's still going to be towards the bottom of the league. Not the bottom, but, Ryan Fitzpatrick is your starting quarterback. You just never know how that's going to go. Let's talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars and their quarterback, Gardner Minshew. He has just hit his stride over the last 2 weeks. And though they didn't win against the Titans, they made that way closer of a game than it probably should have been. Minshew pretty much outdueled Ryan Tannehill. I mean, it was close. If you look at the stats, it was really close. But Gardner Minshew, man, he was throwing touchdowns all over the place. He has, some consistent targets to go to. DJ Chark, Laviska Shenault, the rookie wide receiver. He has some targets to go to. Mike Gesicki had a big game against the Titans. He has some targets to throw to, man. And this Jaguars team, who we all thought were tanking, they got rid of some key pieces. You think of Yannick Ngakoue as one of those. But they really just, Leonard Fournette, they really just kind of hit their stride. And Minshew is making sure that they don't tank. If everyone else is trying to tank, they're not doing a good job out of it. They have Robinson, the undrafted rookie running back who's had a few decent games so far. So I'm going to take the Jaguars on this game. I think that Gardner Minshew will have another great game. He probably throws a pick, but I say he's probably also going to throw for 250, 300 yards, a few touchdowns, and I think the Jaguars come out of Thursday night with a win. So let's talk about the NBA Conference Finals. Then we'll go on a little break and talk about the Premier League Match Day 2, and then we'll wrap up the show. So let's start with Miami and Boston because Denver and LA is tonight, so that's a big game for us. But the Miami Heat versus the Boston Celtics. The Miami Heat, as we speak, are up 2-1 on the Boston Celtics. And the big question that I wanted to pose is, can Boston use their talent to overcome Miami's momentum? Because if you look at the teams, you match them up, you just look at pure talent, I'm probably going to take the Celtics. They have Gordon Hayward, Kemba Walker, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Marcus Smart, to a slightly lesser degree. Then you have like Daniel Tice, good role players. Daniel Tice and Brad Wanamaker can be pretty decent sometimes. You never know. Robert Williams can have a decent game here and there. They have really good talent. And if you look at Miami, they're talented. Duncan Robinson, Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, Jimmy Butler, of course. We can't not talk about him. But if you look at just pure talent, I'd probably take the Boston Celtics. But the Miami Heat just have this kind of momentum, this just kind of fire and force to them. They just keep taking it to every team in their way. And that's how they went up 2-0 on the Celtics. But the Celtics managed to take game 3, and they are looking to even up this series soon. So can they? Can they make this a talent versus talent game? I mean, it's a neutral site in the NBA bubble. It should be the better team wins. But Miami could be the better team in this situation just because of how they played lately. Can they neutralize Jimmy Butler? Can they get past the stifling defense of pretty much everyone on the Miami Heat? It seems like maybe not Duncan Robinson, but pretty much everyone else plays decent defense on the Miami Heat, especially Bam and Jimmy. One of the best defensive duos in the league, if not the best. And, Boston, they're going to try to get Jason Tatum to play that superstar role. That's what they need, honestly. They need Jason Tatum to just take over games. Jaylen Brown, he'll hit a few threes here and there. They'll play decent defense. Marcus Smart will try to lock down. They'll try to limit the threes from Miami, who's a really good three-point shooting team. But they need Jason Tatum to play the superstar role because, as we've seen, teams that win the NBA championships usually have a superstar behind them. And Jason Tatum has shown that he can be that guy, and he's played pretty well over this series. And at the, kind of the tail end of the year before we went into the bubble. So we know he has that kind of talent, and he can be consistently really good and playing at a superstar level. But can he take it to the next level and do it in the playoffs? Can he lead the Boston Celtics to a huge series victory over the Miami Heat? Now, I think if the Boston Celtics do manage to overcome the Heat, if they manage to tie up the series, they get some momentum on their own side, and they somehow come out of this series with a win, I really don't think they stand a chance against, especially if it's the Lakers. I don't think they stand a chance against the Lakers. But it would be really good for them to get some deep playoff run experience for a team of pretty young guys. I mean, I'd still consider Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown to be super young. And can they get them some really deep playoff run experience? I know that they've been to the conference finals before, but if they can make it to the finals, man, I have a lot more faith in this team next year to kind of run it back, maybe, get a better center and make a big run. It's good for them to have It's good for them to have Gordon Hayward back, one of their, key pieces. I know he hasn't exactly played like it all this year. He's been out sometimes, injured or, doing stuff outside of the bubble. But when he's played, he's at least made an impact for this Celtics team, and I think his presence there is really important for that team. So we'll see if he can continue to impact the game. Let's talk about Denver versus LA, the Nuggets versus the Lakers. Game 3 is tonight. The Lakers are up 2-0. Can Denver put together another historic comeback? I don't know. I don't think so. I really don't. Here's why. Anthony Davis is the greatest big man in basketball. I'm right. Everything that he can do is amazing. People have taken Jokic. People have said Jokic is the best big man in the NBA. And, before the series, maybe I agree with them, maybe I don't. He's a great passer. I can't deny that. He can score in the post. He's consistent. But he's just not the same defender that AD is. And though Jokic has a really, nice jump shot, he makes some crazy shots that nobody else in the NBA can make. AD, that man can hit shots. We saw that in Game 2. That game-winning buzzer-beater three-pointer from him. He can hit shots. He is a good, if not great, jump shooter. He is good in the post. He may not be as good as Jokic in the post, but he's a great in the post. He's a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. This guy is incredible, and we've been taking him for granted because he's been on some bad Pelicans teams. And now that he's on the Lakers, now that he's playing in a starring role with one of the best teams, if not the best team in the NBA, man, we have finally gotten to appreciate his greatness on the court. And then you have LeBron James, playoff Braun. I mean, the guy just... What else can you say about LeBron James that hasn't been said? Greatest player in the league, in my opinion. He's consistent. Sometimes he looks like an old man sometimes throughout the games, but no matter what, he's going to have a big impact on the game. Even if his stats don't say that, usually, defenses have to pay a lot of attention to him. He opens up the game for his teammates. That's just the LeBron James thing at this point. And that's not even taking into account Rajon Rondo, who's had a really good playoff so far. The man just gets steals every game. He impacts them defensively. He's I don't think I need to say this because we're if you're watching this, you probably know about the NBA. But Rajon Rondo, great passer. I know. We all know that at this point. But he's also had some decent scoring games throughout the playoffs. So, maybe he'll give you 10, 15 points some nights, which is really good for them. So I think LA will win the game tonight, and I think they'll probably win this in 5. It's going to be probably not that close of a series. Game 1 wasn't close. Game 2 was very close. I'm going to predict another close game tonight, and LA just manages to pull it off, probably by like 3 or 5 points. So the Los Angeles Lakers, their forward Anthony Davis, their guard LeBron James are going to put it together, and they're going to have another starring performance. I predict LeBron's going to have a huge night. That's everything from me for the NBA. And when I come back, we're going to talk about Premier League Match Day 2, and then we're going to wrap up the show. I'm Austin Hoagland. This has been Man Watches Sports, and I'll be back in just a moment. All right, and we're back. We're going to get into the last few things of the show, and then we'll wrap it up for the first ever episode of the Man Watches Sports video podcast. So, let's talk about Premier League Match Day 2. So, the first thing I want to get into, Manchester United versus Crystal Palace. Are Manchester United going to disappoint again this season? Will they make the top 6? Will they make it to the Europa Leagues? This is a team that is expected to compete for the top 4, if not the top 6, every year, and they disappoint a majority of the years. The Gunners, man, they just don't look like that team right now. Paul Pogba, he's never been able to put on a consistent season, it feels like, at Man U. He's never been able to show that he's a superstar in the Premier League, and he just doesn't look like that guy for Manchester United. They've rolled out different lineups. They've tried bringing in more talent from everywhere around the world. Transfers here and there. They've kind of been quiet this transfer window, but they've been making moves, and they just don't seem like they're going to do it. Crystal Palace, meanwhile, has looked like a very good team. Zaha has been pretty consistent. We've been talking about when is Zaha going to leave Crystal Palace this season. But if they perform like this, maybe he stays. He scored 2 goals against Manchester United this match day, and it looked pretty good for him. And Palace, they played pretty well defensively. Didn't really let up that many chances to Manchester United. And we'll have to see where Crystal Palace goes this season. Most of these are going to be pretty quick topics, by the way. I'm just going to kind of get through this pretty quickly for now, and we'll kind of come back more and talk a little bit more about Premier League a little bit later in the season, probably. Each week I'm probably going to talk about it, but it's not going to be as long as some of the other topics are because, I don't have as much to talk about with these teams. Let's talk about Chelsea-Liverpool. So I watched 100% of this game, and I have to say that it was just a clinic by Liverpool. It was a 2-0, but it was quite the clinic by Liverpool, and they look pretty amazing so far, to be honest, for a title defense season. They look pretty good to start off the bat. You can't forget match day 1. where my boy Mo Salah had a hat trick. It was a pretty great game for Mohamed Salah. Van Dijk let up a goal. He made a mistake. He looked a little bit more consistent this game, and they didn't really let Chelsea do anything, And we have to talk about Werner for Chelsea and his consistent underperforming performances. That's even a great pair of words to say. Over the first few match days, it was not good for him. And, Chelsea's new transfers, are they going to make them a title contending team? I just don't know, man. And how much do they have to do to be competitive with Liverpool? You have to look at them and be like, they might still be a piece away. And is that going to be Thiago Silva? Maybe it will be. Maybe Thiago Silva comes on to this side and maybe he completely changes the fortunes of Chelsea. Maybe they're really what they were supposed to be, and they're going to be contending for the number one spot like some people think they are. But for now, it looks like they're more contending for top four. And, it was just kind of an underwhelming performance from Chelsea. Yeah, of course they're playing Liverpool, the title favorites, I'd say. The probably the best team in football, in soccer, or whatever you want to call it. But it just seemed like they weren't really ready. They weren't really ready to hang with the big dogs just yet. And I know it's early in the season. It's match day 2. They're up against one of the best teams in the league. They haven't had a chance to gel like Liverpool has with, limited people being brought in. Fabinho was really good for Liverpool. But, Chelsea, I want to see more out of them. I want to see more out of Werner, a guy who they paid a lot of money to, and he hasn't really shown up yet. And, Lampard has said that he trusts him to step up. He hasn't really got a chance. He needs to have some help around him. He needs to get the ball a little bit more, a few more touches throughout the game. But even that missed, he was offsides by probably a while. But he got a chance in that game, just one-on-one versus the goalkeeper, and completely whiffed. I might be able to make a better attempt on goal than he did. And I am not somebody who can play soccer. I haven't been able to play for a long time. I did play in my youth, but it was not bad. And so you want to see a little bit more out of Werner. You want to see a little bit more out of Lampard's side. How will he get his team to the next level? We'll see later in the season, I'm sure. So my last question of the day, and my last question for the Premier League topic is, are Manchester City on par with Liverpool in the title race? Manchester City just played their first game against the Wolverhampton Wanderers. Watched that full game as well. 3-1 to Manchester City. And even though the score looks good, they were a little inconsistent. Let up a pretty good goal to Raul Jimenez, who is absolutely fantastic. Love watching Jimenez play on the pitch. He is a wonder to watch. Very fun. And this Wolves team is pretty fun with all the Portuguese players they have on their squad. But, Man City, for a team that is expected to be right in the title race, I don't know if they're on the same level as Liverpool. I really don't. If Kevin De Bruyne's there, you can never count him out. He played phenomenally in the game against Wolves. But, with a few key injuries to some of their guys, they haven't done as much as they could. And, they look just a small step behind Liverpool in the title race. I think they'll start to get into it, especially with some of their guys coming back later in the season. And I expect them to be right there with Liverpool. But just based off that first performance, I'd say they're a small step behind Liverpool in the title race. So, that is everything. Wow, I made it through the first week. A little bit shorter than I expected. I really don't know how long these are going to be. I think that I made it around 50 minutes to an hour, just of me talking, man. That's pretty crazy for me. And we'll have a little bit more to talk about because I'm going to talk about more games in the NFL. I'm going to talk a little more in depth about some of these NBA games, and we'll even have some more soccer topics. But one of the big topics, one of the big things that I want to get to is I want you guys to drop your questions. Drop a question in the comment section below, and I really want to see you guys' questions. I don't care what it is. I don't care what sport it is. You can be talking about tennis, and I will still go and try to answer that on the next episode or a future episode of the podcast. Any questions that you guys have, I guarantee you that I will at least look at them and that I will answer them either in the comments or on a podcast. So please feel free. I'd love to do a Q&A segment sometime in this podcast history. So please drop your questions below. Make sure to check out manwatchesports.wordpress.com. Yeah, I know I don't have like a cool domain name or anything. I have the WordPress domain, so don't hate on me too much. But check out my website. I drop articles there pretty much every day if I can. I just started, I know, but I'm going to try to drop consistent content throughout there so you guys can see stories, news, everything going on in the world of sports, man. I watch sports every day. I try to be there for it. And I try to give you guys my analysis, my predictions, my opinions on sports. And try to do it in a seemingly objective but somewhat subjective way. So that is everything from me, guys. Thank you so much for listening and watching this. Please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I would very much appreciate it. Tune in to the next episode whenever it drops. So make sure that you guys are watching the channel. If you guys subscribe, turn on the noties, then you'll be able to get every single episode of this podcast right in your ears. You can watch it. You can watch it before you go to sleep. You can watch it while you're out on a walk, while you're in your car. It's decently, it's right in that middle length where, you can put it on the background. You can just hear about your favorite sports. So I've been Austin Hoagland, your host for the Man Watches Sports podcast, and I will see you guys all in the next one.